Hi, I'm Leora. My parents once told me I was too fragile to run a business, but they had no problem stealing $25,000 from me to buy designer heels for my sister. They called her the future of the family, while using my name, my savings, and my silence to fund their lies. I didn't scream, I didn't confront. I just smiled and let them enjoy the gala. They had no idea the whole time. I was setting the stage. What I did next, it didn't just expose them, it changed everything. Have you ever realized your own family feared your success more than your failure? Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this and where from? Drop a comment, because this isn't just my story, it might be yours too. Mornings in my apartment usually arrive quietly. The kind of quiet that hums instead of speaks. The coffee maker clicks on by habit before my mind is fully awake. Steam curls up from a chipped white mug I never bothered to replace. Outside my window, Portland moves at half speed in early autumn. Damp sidewalks, pale sky, the faint smell of rain on concrete. I had learned to like that quiet. It was honest. No applause, no judgment. Just me, my thoughts, and another workday waiting to be shaped. That morning felt ordinary, tired, but ordinary. I skimmed through a few design drafts on my tablet, mentally rearranging layouts for a client who never seemed satisfied. Digital product design paid the bills, barely, but it had taught me discipline, patience, how to build something from nothing and keep polishing even when no one noticed. While the coffee cooled, my phone buzzed on the counter. A message from my sister, Elodie, a blurry photo of sparkling heels inside a glass display case. "Gala week," she wrote. "These would look amazing with my dress." I didn't reply. I rarely did anymore. Elodie lived inside a world that orbited only her. Compliments, favors, expectations. All of it fell into her lap as if by design. I told myself not to resent it. That envy was childish. Still, something in me tightened every time her name lit up my screen. I wasn't officially invited to the gala. Not as a guest, anyway. My mother had said they already confirmed the final count, but she added quickly that I could stop by if I wanted, as if I were a neighbor, not a daughter. After I dressed for work, I checked my bank balance the way I always did before leaving. A habit born from years of careful budgeting, rent, utilities, groceries. Slow progress toward a dream I rarely spoke out loud anymore. The number on the screen didn't make sense. I blinked once, then again, refreshed the app. $25,000 was gone. My chest tightened so fast, it felt like the air had been pulled from the room. My fingers moved without permission, scrolling through recent transactions. The date was yesterday. The merchant name read like a luxury brand and I would never willingly touch. Designer retail, high-end footwear, multiple charges stacked together like mockery. I hadn't bought shoes in 2 years. A slow chill moved through me. Not panic, recognition. I called the bank first. My voice stayed steady out of habit. The woman on the other end confirmed what I already knew. The purchases were authorized, entered with my card number, processed without dispute. When I asked how, she hesitated. The verification matched previous spending patterns on the account. Previous spending patterns. I almost laughed. The only spending pattern my family had tied to me was silence. I didn't call Elodie. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, breathless like she had been busy. "Leora, what is it? I'm in the middle of something." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Did you take money from my account?" There was a pause, short, calculated. Then a sigh that carried more annoyance than guilt. "Why are you making this sound so dramatic?" "I'm asking a simple question." Another sigh. "Your father will explain." As if on cue, he joined the call. His voice carried that familiar firmness that had silenced me since childhood. "We used the funds for Elodie's preparations. Appearances matter at this level. The gala isn't just a party, it's visibility." "It was my money," I said. "It's family money," he corrected, "and we made a decision that benefits all of us." All of us. I tasted the words like something spoiled. I tried to breathe, tried not to sound like the unreasonable one. "You could have asked," my mother answered this time. "You always get so emotional about money." Emotional. That was how they named my limits, my boundaries, my survival. There was a moment of silence before I said the next thing. I had rehearsed it for months in my head. "I wanted to talk to you both about something anyway. I'm ready to register my business. I have the plan drafted. It's not risky. I just need—" My mother cut in before I could finish. "Honey, you wouldn't last a week. You're not cut out for that kind of pressure." My father added, calm and final, "It's better the money went somewhere it could actually help the family." The words settled into me one by one, not shouted, not cruel in tone, just precise enough to leave no room for misunderstanding. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I thanked them for their honesty the way I had been trained to do. Then I ended the call. The apartment felt smaller after that. The quiet pressed in harder. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, staring at the folder I hadn't dared to touch in weeks. Business plan. Draft. They hadn't even asked to read it. Memory slipped in without permission. School award ceremonies where Elodie's name filled the room and mine was read quickly, as if by obligation. Family photos where I was always just outside the center. Conversations where my opinions landed softly and disappeared. I closed my eyes for a moment. "This won't happen again," I said out loud. The words felt strange, heavy, real. A message from Elodie came through seconds later. Another photo, the shoes now in a branded bag. "Worth every penny," she wrote. My fingers hovered over the screen. Then I typed back 4 words. "Enjoy the gala!" After that, I opened a new set of folders on my computer. Bank statements, old emails, shared access logs. I wasn't crying, I wasn't shaking. Something colder and clearer had taken over. Because if they thought I was invisible, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I didn't sleep, not really. I moved from the kitchen to the couch and back again, trying to make sense of what I knew and what I didn't. At some point, the lamp above the dining table cast a dull glow across my notes, half-drunk coffee, and a laptop that now felt like a vault of secrets. I opened it again. But this time, I wasn't acting out of panic. I moved with intention. Transaction history. I scrolled back 3 months. There were a few regular charges I expected: rent, internet, groceries. But then I noticed something that made me pause. A quiet little line item that didn't belong. Transfer to savings, Business Pilot Act. I stared at it. That was an old account I opened years ago, when I first played with the idea of freelancing. I'd barely touched it since. I used it to test payment systems back when I was learning back-end integrations. It wasn't linked to my daily spending. Or at least, it shouldn't have been. I clicked deeper. The account was still active, still pulling from my main checking. And worse, those funds weren't just sitting there. They had been used, not once, not twice. Multiple charges, all tied to high-end fashion brands, online stylist fees, even a deposit for some boutique event planning company in San Francisco. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. This wasn't a moment of bad judgment. This wasn't impulsive. They had planned it. The only people who ever had access to that Business Pilot account were my parents, back when they helped me set it up. I never thought twice about it after, but they had kept the login, kept the access, and never once mentioned it. It made my stomach turn. I felt like a locked door that had never really been closed. I clicked through more history, screenshotting everything, one after another. Quiet little fingerprints. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew better than to leave them buried. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated, picked up. "Hi, is this Leora Hale?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Rhea and Bram from the Portland Fall Gala Committee. We just wanted to confirm the shoe sponsorship payment for Elodie Hale's entrance under Hale Family Productions." I blinked. "I'm sorry, the what?" There was a pause. Then Bram spoke, sounding a bit sheepish. "Oh, we thought you were her assistant. You're listed as the primary on the payment profile." Of course I was. Of course they used my name. I forced my tone to stay polite. "I'll have to get back to you on that." They both chuckled, as if this was all part of some busy social dance. "No worries. Just trying to finalize the billing breakdown before Saturday." I hung up. The anger didn't hit all at once. It came in slow, like a tide pulling back. I stared out the window for a while. Then I called Elodie. She answered like she always did, carefree. "Leora, you're alive. What's up?" "I just got off the phone with the gala. Committee." A pause. "Oh, they called me, not you, about a sponsorship, with my name on it." She laughed, light, dismissive, the way someone laughs when they're already bored with the topic. "Yeah, that's just how they process things. It's a formality." "It's not a formality. It's fraud." "Okay, calm down. You're being dramatic. Mom and Dad signed off on it. It's not like we did anything shady." "You used my account. And they're our parents. It's all in the family." I sat there, trying to find something in her voice that sounded remotely like guilt. There was nothing. "Elodie," I said slowly, "you had no right." She sighed, clearly annoyed now. "Look, you don't understand how these things work. These events matter. Visibility matters. You've always stayed out of this stuff, and that's fine. But let the people who get it handle it. Stay out of family decisions." There it was, the line, "Stay out." I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch until she got uncomfortable. She said something else, but I'd already pulled the phone away from my ear and ended the call. I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the blue light of the screen. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. I thought about when I was 9, and Elodie forgot her lines in the school play. I fed her the words from the front row, and afterward, she got flowers. I got a ride home. I remembered being 16, building my first website from scratch. Dad looked over my shoulder once and said, "Well, as long as it doesn't distract you from finding a real job." I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I started a new document. I began logging everything: dates, transaction IDs, call times, screenshots, all of it. Hours passed. Outside, the city lights flickered on. I needed air. I stepped out onto the balcony, the air cool and slightly damp. The sky was ink dark, the kind that only belongs to a city at rest, but never asleep. "They think I won't fight back," I whispered. Back inside, my phone buzzed again. New email, forwarded thread. The subject line read, "Final decision. Remove Leora from the trust conversation." I opened it. It was from my father, sent to a lawyer, copied to my mother. They weren't just ignoring me, they were erasing me. And in that moment, I realized this betrayal didn't start with the stolen $25,000. It started long before that, in the moments I tried hardest to be part of this family. I was still sitting by the window when the weight of the forwarded email finally sank in. My fingers clutched the phone, but my eyes were somewhere else, glazed over. Sometimes pain doesn't hit like a hammer. It seeps in, cold and quiet, winding its way around your ribs before you even realize you're holding your breath. My breath caught now, but not from the message, from the memory it dragged out. I was 10. Portland's summers always smelled like sun-warmed pavement and distant pine, and that afternoon was no different. I had made the cut for the local youth soccer team. I remember how proud I felt walking out of tryouts, my coach slapping my shoulder with a big grin. "You've got good instincts, Leora. Solid midfield material." It was the first time an adult outside my family looked me in the eye and called me capable. I ran up to my parents' car, sweaty and beaming, still clutching the acceptance letter. They didn't get out. My mom just rolled down the window and said, "Sweetie, we need to talk." They told me Elodie didn't make her tryouts. "She's taking it harder than we expected," my dad added. "She could really use a confidence boost." Then Mom, "We think it's best if she takes your spot. You'll understand when you're older." I was 10. What I understood was that Elodie needed something, and that meant I had to disappear. So I nodded, smiled even. I withdrew from the team the next day. No one asked why. That pattern repeated itself like background noise through my life. By the time I was 17, I'd gotten a small academic scholarship, modest but enough to pay for all my books for the first semester of college. It felt like a win. I came home waving the letter, eager to tell them. Dad skimmed it. "That's cute, honey," he said, "but these things fall through. Don't get your hopes up." A few weeks later, I asked about the disbursement. Mom told me it got held up in processing. "Probably a clerical error," she said with a shrug. "You'll have to pay for books yourself." I did. What I didn't know until years later, until I was helping Mom clean out a file cabinet after she had knee surgery, was that the scholarship hadn't fallen through. The funds had been redirected. I found the deposit slip buried between old tax returns. It had gone straight into an account tied to Elodie's school expenses. They'd lied, not just about money, but about what I was worth, about whether I mattered enough to keep what I'd earned. I remember staring at that paper, feeling numb. I didn't ask them about it. I just folded the slip back up and walked away. At 22, after graduating with honors and landing a stable design job, I told my dad I wanted to open a small studio. I even showed him my pitch deck, which I'd spent weeks perfecting. He barely glanced at it before saying, "You're too soft for real business, Leora. You'd let clients walk all over you." Then my mother chimed in, half laughing. "Honestly, it would be a little embarrassing. Leave business to people who can take the heat." That night, I deleted the whole folder. Didn't even send it to anyone. Just like that, the dream died before it had a chance. Now, back in my apartment, I saw the full picture. Not just the $25,000, not just the email, but every small theft of identity and possibility I had let slide. Because that's what I was taught to do. Keep quiet, be grateful, don't disrupt the family. But something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. It was a clean, cold realization. They never saw me as part of the family, not really. I was their safety net, their backup plan, their silent partner in crimes I never agreed to. I glanced at the bookshelf across the room, eyes landing on a tiny velvet box tucked behind a photo frame. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside was a silver bracelet. My grandmother gave it to me on my 13th birthday, long before her health began to fade. She'd looked me straight in the eye and said, "Your voice matters, Leora. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She was the only one in the family who had ever said that. I took the bracelet out, turning it over in my hand. The metal was cool, a little tarnished, but the engraving inside was still sharp. Speak true. I didn't put it on, not yet. I placed it on my desk where I could see it every time I turned my head. It wasn't a symbol of action, it was a marker, a reminder that I wasn't going to vanish this time. Not quietly, not conveniently. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. "Rhea, Family meeting tomorrow. We need to discuss your behavior. The word behavior sat heavy in my chest, like they'd already decided I was the problem. And I knew walking into that meeting would change everything, one way or another. The sun hung low over the suburbs as I pulled into the familiar driveway, the sky behind the house streaked with burnt orange. It should have felt like coming home, but nothing about the place gave me comfort anymore. Not the flower beds Mom used to obsess over, not the chipped blue shutters Dad refused to replace. Everything looked polished, but hollow. Their kind of perfect. I stepped up to the front door, pausing just long enough to draw one deep, steady breath before knocking twice and letting myself in. Inside, the air was cooler than I remembered, almost sterile, like the house had been cleaned for someone else's visit. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and something overcooked. I followed the sound of quiet conversation into the dining room. They were already seated. Bram sat at the head of the long oak table, hands folded, jaw set like stone. Rhea perched next to him, spine straight, a thin smile already fixed in place. Elodie lounged on the opposite side in a soft beige pantsuit, legs crossed, her expression unreadable but clearly rehearsed. There was no seat for me. I stood for a moment absorbing the message. This wasn't a meeting. This was a performance. And I was the unwanted audience. "Leora," Bram said, motioning toward a side chair pushed against the wall. "You can bring that over if you'd like." I didn't move it. I pulled it halfway to the table and sat down without a word. "This family," Bram began, smoothing a folder in front of him, "has always held itself to certain expectations, standards, and lately, you've behaved in ways that are disappointing." He didn't look at me as he spoke. He spoke to the air, the room, maybe to himself. The performance continued. Rhea nodded, her eyes on the tablecloth. "It's been concerning." Not once did either of them mention the money, the stolen funds, the complete betrayal. No apology, not even acknowledgement. I waited. Then Bram slid a document across the table toward me. Thick white paper, company letterhead, legal phrasing. I scanned it quickly. It was a financial amendment, a formal notarized agreement stating that from this point forward, all family-related financial decisions would be made solely by Bram, Rhea, and Elodie. I was being written out, stripped of any influence or input. I blinked once, twice, and then looked up at them. "You already filed this?" I asked, voice low but steady. "It's in everyone's best interest," Bram said. "We need streamlined decision-making, especially with the gala approaching and future ventures on the horizon." I let the paper fall flat on the table. "And I suppose my money just happened to be part of those streamlined decisions?" Rhea flinched, barely. Bram waved a dismissive hand. "Let's not dramatize. You would have wasted it on that little business idea anyway." I heard it again. That tone. That dismissiveness. Like I was a child playing dress-up, not a woman who'd worked every day of her adult life to build something real. Elodie leaned forward, her smile syrupy sweet. "Leora, really, you're spiraling. Airing these things like grievances. It's not healthy. Maybe you should sit out the gala this year. People might start to wonder if something's off." My throat burned. I'd been humiliated before, overlooked, lied to. But this, it was different. It was a calculated dismissal, delivered with a soft voice and an even softer knife. Something inside me solidified. They weren't careless. This wasn't clumsy or emotional. It was planned, coordinated. They wanted me quiet, and if they couldn't have that, they wanted me out. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I folded the document in half and slid it back toward Bram. "Noted," I said, one word. It was all I gave them, and in that one word, I watched the atmosphere in the room shift. Elodie blinked. Rhea's posture faltered. Bram's mouth twitched, just slightly. They'd expected tears, shouting, maybe even begging. Instead, I gave them silence sharper than any scream. I stood, collected my bag, and turned to go. As I reached the doorway, Elodie's voice floated after me. "Hope you're not planning anything stupid." I didn't stop walking, but inside I smiled. That fear in her voice told me everything. They weren't as confident as they pretended. And the moment I stepped outside, their facade began to crack in ways they couldn't control. The door closed behind me with a muted click, but the noise inside my chest was deafening. Every word, every smug glance, every silence from my mother. It throbbed in my ears. I walked fast, too fast, down the front steps and out onto the sidewalk. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just needed to move. The evening air bit colder than before. Leaves scattered across the concrete in gold and rust. My breath came sharp, uneven. Each inhale pressed against the knot in my chest. I must have looked like I was running from something, because I was. I walked through the side streets, not even bothering to check traffic lights. My boots scuffed against the pavement, my hands trembling, not from fear, from something else, something older than this week, older than the stolen money or the gala or Elodie's smirk. This wasn't just about today. It was everything I'd swallowed for years. By the time I reached my apartment, the sky had turned to slate. I let myself in without turning on the lights. Just the soft glow from the hallway fixture filtered in. I kicked off my shoes and dropped my bag by the door. Then I slid to the floor, back pressed to the wall. There, spread out across my living room carpet, were the same papers I'd left that morning. Bank statements, emails, screenshots, timelines. I had tried earlier to make sense of them, to map it all out, but I hadn't been ready. Now, I was. I opened my laptop and went back to the earliest folder I'd archived. I started cross-checking transactions, names, dates. At first, it was small. Things I'd missed. A deposit I didn't remember making. A flight to New York billed under my name but tied to Elodie's account. Then more, luxury subscriptions, stylist fees, hotel stays, all charged to a line of credit I hadn't used since grad school. They'd kept my credit alive and quietly bled it dry. Not just recently, for years. I felt my body go still, not tense, just cold. Like part of me had stopped resisting and was finally letting the truth in. They'd been using me this entire time. A knock at the door startled me. I froze. Another knock, softer. "Leora?" It was Oliver, my neighbor from downstairs. "Sorry, it's late. Your speaker pinged super loud and I wanted to make sure everything's okay." I exhaled and stood slowly, opening the door halfway. Oliver was holding a small brown paper bag. "Brought cookies," he said. "From Mary's." I blinked. "Why?" He shrugged, a kind smile on his face. "You looked like you needed something. I saw you come home. You looked not okay." I stepped aside, wordless, and he followed me in, glancing at the floor scattered with documents. "Family stuff?" he asked gently, sitting cross-legged on the rug. I nodded. "They had a meeting about my behavior. They've basically cut me out of everything." He didn't say anything for a moment, then, "That doesn't surprise me." I looked at him. "Years ago," he said, picking up a paper and setting it back down. "I was at this local networking thing, one of those small business nights at the library downtown. Your sister was there." "Elodie?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I only recognized her because I'd seen her drop by here once. She was chatting with a group and someone asked about you. I remember because it felt weird." "Weird how?" She said something like, "Oh, Leora's not really leadership material. She gets overwhelmed. Our parents keep her focused so she doesn't embarrass herself." I stared at him, breath stalled. She laughed when she said it. Everyone else laughed too. I sat down slowly, legs folding beneath me. That memory, so small, so specific, landed with more weight than I could explain. It was the missing piece, not a misunderstanding, not a one-time betrayal. It was coordinated. My own family had been painting me as unstable, incapable, even to strangers. They didn't just exclude me, they shaped the narrative. "So this is who they've always been," I whispered, more to myself than to Oliver. He stayed quiet, letting the silence settle. I reached for a fresh folder from my drawer and began sliding papers inside, labeled it evidence. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew it had to be kept, tracked, preserved. The silver bracelet sat beside my laptop, glinting faintly in the light. The one my grandmother gave me, the only person who ever looked me in the eyes and said, "You are not invisible." I didn't put it on, not yet. I sat a little straighter. "I won't let them write my story anymore," I murmured. Oliver looked over. "Leora, what are you planning to do?" I met his gaze, calm and certain now. Something I should have done years ago. Because when someone takes everything from you, you learn exactly how much you're capable of. I woke up just before dawn, the city outside still draped in that quiet blue before the world starts humming. My head rested against the arm of the couch, my laptop still open on the coffee table, the folder labeled evidence staring back at me. I hadn't meant to fall asleep, but something about staying on the floor, close to the truth I'd uncovered, had kept me grounded. I didn't feel rested, but I felt clear. This clarity wasn't fragile. It wasn't made of panic or hurt. It was colder, sharper, the kind of calm that only comes after a storm breaks everything in its path and you're left with just enough strength to decide what matters. I brewed a pot of coffee, black and bitter, and sat at my desk. No distractions, no music, just the steady click of keys and the low hum of my building waking up around me. I wasn't searching for comfort anymore, I was searching for evidence. I went deeper than before, rechecked inboxes, scoured deleted files. And then, hidden in the clutter of my spam folder, I found it. An email thread forwarded accidentally from a PR assistant I didn't recognize. The subject line, sponsorship confirmation, Leora C. I clicked. There it was. A conversation between Bram and Rhea, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. They'd used my name, my credentials, and my professional profile to secure a high-profile sponsorship for the gala. Without asking, without telling me. They weren't even trying to hide it from each other. "Leora won't mind as long as it helps the event," Rhea had written. Bram's reply? "She's part of the family. We move as one." No, they moved. I didn't. I wasn't asked to. I was just dragged along like a name on a form. I stared at the screen, hand frozen around my coffee mug. My name had been turned into a tool. Again. I saved the entire thread to my folder, backed it up, and backed it up again. I wasn't going to let this disappear. Mid-morning, I got dressed and headed to work. I needed the structure, needed to feel like something in my life hadn't been touched by their hands. My office was only a few blocks away, a small space I shared with 2 other freelance consultants. Neutral walls, a creaky window, the smell of old carpet and printer ink. It was mine. As I settled in and opened my laptop, a text popped up from Oliver. Oliver. "Just checking in. You good?" I replied, handling it. That was all he needed. He didn't pry. I buried myself in a new project, branding design for a nonprofit based in Bend. It felt good to build something again, to focus, to contribute something meaningful without needing permission. For a few hours, I felt like myself again. Until my phone rang. It was a client, one I'd been working with for 6 months. We had a meeting scheduled that afternoon, but she was calling to cancel. Her voice was hesitant, too careful. "Is everything okay?" I asked. A long pause. Then she cleared her throat. I heard from someone close to your family. She said you're going through something and might not be in the best headspace right now. She made it sound like you were overwhelmed. My stomach turned to stone. Elodie, I said flatly. She didn't respond, but I didn't need her to. I'm fine, I said, completely capable. And I don't appreciate private matters being weaponized against me. The client stammered an apology and promised we'd reschedule, but I knew it wouldn't happen. I ended the call, stood slowly, and walked outside. The chill hit harder now, wind threading through my coat like a warning. I stared at the skyline, Portland's soft mix of gray and steel, cranes rising like questions with no answers. They were trying to break me, again. But something was different now. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was watching, I was listening. And I finally saw the pattern for what it was. Control masked as concern, theft disguised as family loyalty, erasure dressed up as tradition. They feared noise, feared disruption, feared exposure. That's why they needed me small, quiet. But I wasn't going to be any of those things anymore. Back at my desk, I pulled out my notebook and wrote one word at the top of a fresh page: options. I called a legal aid clinic downtown, kept it casual, just asking for resources on financial fraud, identity misuse within families. The woman on the line was kind, unshocked. She'd heard stories like mine before. Too many, probably. I didn't file anything, not yet. But I was learning, gathering, quietly laying bricks for something that wouldn't crack under pressure. That evening, after dinner and a long shower, I sat on my bed with the bracelet in my hands. My grandmother's voice echoed in the back of my mind. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to stand. This time, I didn't place it back on the nightstand. I slipped it over my wrist. It felt right. Not like armor, but like a key. Just before midnight, I finalized the day's file. Everything labeled, time-stamped, locked behind a password. I was about to shut down when my phone lit up. A message from Elodie. Elodie, we need to talk. Urgent. I stared at it, then slowly smiled. Not kindly. By the time I opened her message, the game between us had already changed. I stared at Elodie's text for a few seconds. We need to talk. Somewhere neutral, and knew exactly what that meant. She wanted control again. She wanted a reset, where she could reframe, redirect, manipulate. But I wasn't the same version of myself she used to play chess with. I was done protecting their comfort. I responded with a time and place. 10 a.m. tomorrow, Nora's Cafe, downtown. Busy enough to keep things civil, quiet enough to hear every word. Neutral? Sure, but not private. That was the point. The next morning, I dressed with intention. Not to impress, just to hold my ground. Nothing flashy, just clean, calm, clear. Dark denim, a soft gray sweater, the silver bracelet around my wrist. I looked like someone who wasn't going to be bullied. I arrived early, picked a table in the corner where no one could stand behind me, and ordered coffee. I didn't open my laptop or look at my phone. I just waited, hands folded, eyes steady on the entrance. She showed up 7 minutes late, of course. Elodie walked in like she owned the block. Long camel coat, heels that clicked too loudly for a cafe like this, lips already pursed in performance. She scanned the room, spotted me, and flashed the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm glad you agreed to meet, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. She moved to hug me. I didn't stand. Her arms hovered, then dropped awkwardly. Still on edge, huh? No, I said. Just done pretending. She blinked, sat up straighter, and offered a half laugh like I'd said something cute. I'm here to keep the peace, Leora, she began. You embarrassed Mom and Dad yesterday. They're worried sick. You know how fragile Dad's blood pressure is? And Mom hasn't slept. I let her speak. Let her pile it all on like I was some rogue child causing distress in a family otherwise full of harmony. When she paused, waiting for my reaction, I met her gaze evenly. "I'm not here to talk about Dad's blood pressure," I said. A flicker of something passed over her face. Not fear, not yet, but surprise. This wasn't how I usually played. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and laid it flat between us. I tapped once and turned the screen so she could see. "Recognize that?" I asked. On the screen was a screenshot, a failed login attempt from 2 nights ago. It showed a timestamp and the email used, her old college handle, the one tied to half the shady accounts I'd untangled back in April. She blinked fast, then tried to scoff. "What is that even supposed to prove?" "That you've been digging," I said, "into an account I never told anyone about." Her mouth parted slightly, and for the first time in years, Elodie didn't have a ready line. The pause between us stretched. "You've always been paranoid," she said finally, her voice sharper now. "Always convinced someone's out to get you. It's exhausting. Honestly, I don't know how you've survived this long. You crack under pressure, Leora. You always have." There it was. The venom. The cruelty sharpened into blade-thin lines, meant to cut me where I used to bleed. But this time, I didn't flinch. "Maybe that's what you told them," I said quietly. She leaned in, tone lowering. "Look, if you want to keep pushing this, fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. I've got messages, screenshots, people who'll say whatever needs saying. You think you can fight us and come out clean? I can make one call and the gala board will start asking if you're even stable enough to be there." That was it. The threat. The final weapon when charm and guilt stopped working. Public shaming. Destroy me before I could speak. Paint me as unstable so no one would believe what I was saying. I looked at her for a long time, not at the threat, not at the lie, at the desperation. "You're afraid," I said, "because you've never actually stood on your own without me being silent." She scoffed again, but it was thinner this time. Her shoulders shifted. Something in her armor creaked. "I'm documenting everything," I added. "You should assume that every lie, every attempt is being logged." "You're paranoid," she muttered. "Then you have nothing to worry about," I said. She pulled back, sat rigid. Her fingers reached for her phone just as it began to vibrate. She glanced at the screen. Dad. She stood abruptly and stepped away to take it, forgetting her voice could still carry. She turned toward the windows, but didn't walk far enough. I heard it clearly. "Handle it," Bram said on the other end. "She cannot ruin this for us." There it was. Not suspicion, not theory, confirmation. She returned a moment later, her expression reset, pretending nothing had happened. But I didn't let her pretend. "This ends soon," I said as she reached for her coat. Her fingers paused. "Just not the way you think." She blinked. Just once. The smallest tell. And then she left, heels quieter now. Because the moment I stopped being quiet, their entire foundation started to shake. After Elodie left the coffee shop, I stayed seated for another 10 minutes. Not because I needed time to think. I'd already done that, but to make sure she knew I wasn't rushing after her, that I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. The next evening, the Portland Charity Gala lit up downtown like a movie set. Valet lines, glittering gowns, champagne flutes clinking behind velvet ropes. The kind of scene Elodie thrived in. The kind of space she thought belonged to her. I stepped out of the rideshare car calmly, silver heels grounded, my dress simple and understated, like armor that didn't beg for attention but couldn't be ignored. As I entered, a volunteer at the registration table handed me a formal program. I opened it while still walking, expecting the usual fluff, but my breath hitched as I scanned the list of benefactors. There, printed in bold serif font, right above the line that read, Principal Gala Benefactor, my name, Leora Marin. Donation amount, $50,000 status. Silent donor, per request. I stopped walking. I had never donated $1. I hadn't even RSVP'd until this morning. But now, apparently, I was the face behind the event's most generous contribution, without my consent, without my knowledge. I folded the program shut, carefully, like it might catch fire in my hands. The ballroom swirled with soft jazz, laughter, and expensive perfume. None of it touched me. I moved toward one of the board members I vaguely remembered from years past. Beautiful venue, I said evenly, and quite the honor, being listed as the principal donor. The woman smiled brightly. Oh yes, your parents said you insisted on remaining anonymous. Very noble. Most people your age want their name in lights. I stared at her for a moment longer than necessary. Right, always been shy, I guess. As I drifted away, her words echoed in my head. They said you insisted. My jaw clenched. I made my way backstage, away from the glitter and noise, where staff buzzed and caterers passed by in a blur. I found Rhea, poised, always watching from the wings. She turned when she saw me. Her expression softened, which surprised me. They said you were fragile, she said softly. Said the finances would overwhelm you. That's why they handled things this year. They've been saying that for years, I said. Rhea didn't deny it. She just looked tired. I believed them. I thought I was helping by staying out of it. I didn't respond. What was there to say? The lies hadn't just protected Elodie. They'd built a narrative so convincing that even good people helped spread it. And then the lights dimmed. A host with perfect teeth took the stage, welcoming the crowd, praising the legacy families who'd made the event possible. And then she introduced Elodie. My sister emerged into the spotlight like she'd rehearsed the moment in her dreams, her dress shimmering, hair in place, smile locked and ready. She opened with charm, with stories, with laughter. She thanked sponsors, the board, and the community. Then her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. She smiled wider. And of course, we must acknowledge those who have tried their hand at building but found the weight of leadership difficult, she said sweetly. People chuckled, unsure. Not everyone is built for pressure, she continued, voice syrupy. Some dream, others do. A few nervous laughs, a few confused glances, and me, still seated, still silent, but no longer invisible. I stood. I moved through the tables slowly. Elodie's voice faltered. The room turned to watch. She tried to continue, but the tension had shifted. They felt it, even if they didn't understand it yet. When I reached the back of the room, I gave a small nod toward Oliver, who was manning the AV booth. He inserted the USB drive into the system. The screen behind Elodie lit up. First slide, a timeline. Unauthorized charges, spanning years. Next, designer purchases under my name, styling services, airline tickets. Then, login attempts to a savings account, attempts traced to devices registered to Elodie, and finally, a donation receipt. My forged digital signature, $50,000, submitted to the gala committee. The room broke into gasps. Elodie turned, frozen. Her smile collapsed. "What is this?" she barked. But no one was listening to her anymore. In the front row, one of the board members stood slowly. "Why is Bram Marin's name on these wire transfers?" Everyone turned. Bram, seated in the third row, looked like he'd swallowed glass. He stuttered something about reimbursements, about family accounts, but it was too late. Elodie turned on him. "You said it was all handled." "You were shopping like a movie star," he snapped. "I had to cover the overdrafts. You used her money? She didn't even check her statements." Their argument echoed through the microphone. No one turned off the sound. No one saved them. Rhea stepped forward, pulling the microphone gently from its stand. "Enough," she said, and then my parents emerged from the side door, pale and desperate. "We didn't know it went that far," my mother said quickly. We wanted Elodie to have her moment." "You wanted a family mascot," I said. "You just didn't want it to be me." My father opened his mouth, but the weight of what hung in the air shut it again. I walked slowly to the stage, took the mic from Rhea. The room stilled. "I'm done funding the version of the family you prefer," I said clearly. "I choose myself now." Silence. Not awkward, not hostile, just still. Like the exact second before a storm breaks and the wind changes direction. I handed the mic back, turned, and as I walked off stage, my mother's voice trembled behind me. "Please, don't leave us like this." I didn't turn back. Freedom didn't mean peace right away. It meant choosing what came next on my terms. The next morning, I drove out to the coast before the sun was fully up. The sky was still a faded gray, stretched out like wrinkled linen above the ocean. I parked along a nearly empty overlook, pulled my coat tight, and stepped out into the salty air. The waves moved slow but certain, just like I was learning to. I stood there watching the tide roll in, my breath visible in the cool air. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just existed, for once, on my own terms. No one asking, no one watching. The sound of the water grounded me more than applause ever could. That moment, quiet, cold, honest, felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. By late afternoon, I was back in Portland, scrolling through my phone while reheating leftover soup. Articles were already circling online. Silent donor exposes fraud at Portland Charity Gala. Elodie Marin under investigation for fund mismanagement. Family dynasty faces public reckoning. Each headline read like the closure I didn't know I needed. Elodie had tried to release a vague statement, blaming clerical misunderstandings and stress-induced miscommunication. But the board wasn't buying it. They'd suspended her pending investigation. Bram, meanwhile, was suddenly very quiet. Rumor was his finances were under audit. And my parents? Nothing but silence. 2 days later, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, Rhea stood there holding 2 cups of coffee from the little shop across the street. "I figured you'd need something stronger than tea today," she said, offering one to me. I stepped aside to let her in. She didn't make small talk, just sat, took a sip, and then looked at me with that mix of care and clarity only someone who's seen a lot can carry. "You didn't ruin them," she said softly. "You revealed them." That line hit somewhere deep, not sharp, not cruel, just true. I let it settle inside me like a stone at the bottom of a calm lake. Later that week, my parents asked to meet in private. I agreed, but on neutral ground. A small park just outside the city where no one knew us. They arrived looking older than I remembered. My mother sat stiffly on the bench. My father kept rubbing the side of his neck, like he was working up courage. "We're sorry," she said. The words came out uneven, like they hadn't been practiced, but meant more because of it. "We thought we were helping," she continued. "Elodie, she always needed the spotlight. And we thought you didn't. You never asked for it." My father still didn't meet my eyes. "We leaned on you," he muttered. "Too much, because you never pushed back." "I forgive you," I said quietly. "But I'm not stepping back into the role you built for me." They both nodded, slowly. It didn't feel like a door slamming shut. It felt like an overdue exhale. The following afternoon, Elodie showed up unannounced. She stood outside my building, arms crossed, sunglasses too big for her face. "I'm not here to fight," she said the moment I opened the door. I'm overwhelmed. I didn't know Bram took it that far. I didn't ask him to." I listened. I didn't interrupt. That was new for both of us. She offered half apologies, mostly to herself. She didn't take real responsibility, but I could see the cracks. Her certainty was gone. When she turned to leave, she looked back and added, "Maybe someday you'll see I didn't mean to hurt you." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm not carrying that weight anymore." She nodded once. Then she was gone. The next morning, I woke to an email with the subject line, "Your LLC application status." I clicked it with shaking hands. Approved. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Minutes later, another email arrived. From the Gala board. They wanted to hire me as a strategic consultant for nonprofit transparency and ethics. "Not out of sympathy," the message read, "out of respect." I sat back in my chair, stunned, and deeply, quietly proud. By week's end, I stood inside the small workspace I just leased. It smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. There was nothing on the desk yet, except one thing: a folded receipt, the same one that started it all. $25,000 for a gown Elodie wore once. I wasn't keeping it out of spite. I was keeping it as a reminder. Never again would I make myself small for someone else's comfort. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper, then placed it inside the top drawer. Sometimes the people who fear your success are the ones who depended on your silence. The day you stop apologizing for wanting more, your life finally starts. And this time, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward myself.